Mental illness is caused by a number of factors that are common in our environment, others within us. Simply to put it, there are causes that are inbuilt in a person, and others come from outside the person. Now, in the person, the common things we see are the genes. Some of the diseases are genetically acquired and passed on to our offsprings. Like it happens when you have a disease running within families, or somebody has a disease because the parents had it, or the uncles, or some other people. So we say the disease can be genetic. Or passed on in our language in the blood from one person to another. So that is about the individual. A few other things about the individual, it could be age-related, and here the common ones are like as we grow old, there are some diseases that we naturally acquire, like things related to memory or forgetting or dementia. That comes because of advancing age. Also related to individuals are things like personality or development about of the individual. Some of these change us and make us vulnerable or make it easier for us to develop certain diseases. Now, the others, as I said, are mainly from the external, out of the individual. And in the environment are a number of conditions that could cause mental illness in people. Commonly, the infections that we get from out. Malaria in our environment is very common. There are lots of people that suffer malaria and also end up developing mental complications. Other common infections, typhoid, for example. HIV/AIDS comes to our bodies from outside, and HIV/AIDS is one of those common ailments that eventually make somebody develop a mental problem. We know that over 90% of people who suffer HIV/AIDS at one stage do get some form of mental illness. Injuries to our bodies, especially to the brain, like somebody falling off a motorcycle, boda, and hits the head down on the ground, and they could end up with mental complications later in life. We get, or any other form of road traffic accident or falling on the ground from any cause. Then there are things that we take into our bodies that could be toxic, and common in our environment. We have people that are taking a lot of alcohol, people that are smoking marijuana and doing other drugs. Now these ones end into our bodies, into the brain, and causing trouble for us, and people suffering various forms of mental illness. Then there are those experiences that people go through, overwhelming to the person, overwhelming to the mind, like somebody witnessing a very difficult situation, like we had people who've witnessed war, people being killed, people suffering various forms of injury or death, and probably they survive. It happened in the west, in the east sometime back. They would do the landslides. I mean, people come up with those difficult experiences that become overwhelming, and they could suffer various forms of mental illness. People that suffered losses, maybe you set up a business and it collapses, or you have a house, it is burnt down, you lose a loved one through death, or relationship getting terminated at some point. A lot of people can't stand that, and they find themselves ending up in a difficult situations or with mental illness. So in a nutshell, these generally are some of the grouped together are common causes of mental illness in our environment. So to speak, a lot of the causes are not things that are not ordinary. I think the common causes are ordinary things that we have in our environment, really. It's not unusual that this kind of question is asked. Apparently, it's not only asked by the mentally sick. Any person that suffers any kind of disease, physical or mental, will ask, why me? If you are traveling to the city and along the way you get involved in an accident, you ask yourself, why did this accident happen to me and not to the taxi that was ahead of me or the one that was behind me? So it's always a common feeling that people go through. You ask, why is it you that has got this kind of disease? If you get high blood pressure, you ask, why me and not any other person? If you've got diabetes, if you got cancer, you ask, but why has it come to me and why now and not another person? So it's not an unusual question that people ask each time one is going through a challenge in life with a mental or physical problem, even a social problem. It's a common thing to ask, why me and why not another person? Yes, witchcraft is a difficult thing to explain. But I think the biggest thing we can say is that a lot of the mental illnesses that people suffer from now, science is able to explain why something has happened, why somebody is presenting with such symptoms, and probably able to predict the kind of course that the disease will have. Of course, previously, it was at some point difficult to explain why people suffered mental disorders. But I think now science is very, very able to explain that. This is why we are now able to say it's not a mysterious disease, it's not witchcraft, it's not a curse, it is something that is happening because there are changes, known changes scientifically that are taking place in somebody's body or specifically in somebody's brain. We have machines that help us to diagnose mental illness, not specifically the disease, but primarily to see what else could be behind the symptoms that a person is presenting with. Generally for mental illness, it's about us or about health workers looking at a checklist of symptoms, mainly in terms of behavior, feelings, and expressions that one will say somebody might be having a mental illness. But then behind that, the mentally sick can also be taken through usual normal investigations to see how the brain is functioning, to see how the brain is reacting to certain situations, and that can be helpful in terms of making a diagnosis. For example, like we said, HIV/AIDS is one of the common causes for somebody presenting with mental symptoms. So we can use a machine to test for presence of the virus in somebody's blood and maybe the brain. So that's a machine that is used to diagnose. But not to say not to diagnose the mental illness per se, but to diagnose what could be precipitating the symptoms that a person is presenting with. There are various forms of mental illness, and people respond differently to the types of treatment that we have. What may be helpful to me may not be helpful to the other. So the best thing is to trust the health workers, so that they make the decision in the person's best interest. Of course, with the discussion with the client, if they accept. Some clients of ours, some service users, will best respond to that kind of treatment that they are talking about. We call it electroconvulsive therapy. It is a good form of treatment for certain clients, certainly not for everybody, but there are those that we find benefit very, very much from it. So it should not be really rejected. It should be embraced, and where it works, let it be used for some clients. Seclusion is not widely acceptable method of support to our clients. However, I must say, in our hospital, we occasionally use it, but under specific guidelines. We use it mainly because of the very, very limited human resource that we have. So if a patient came in our facility, is potentially aggressive, is very restless, of course, one of the things that is done at the time is to give that person medication so that they can calm down and rest a bit. But as sometimes in some patients, that process, as you've given medication and you are waiting for the patient to calm down, some people it takes a bit long, and they require to be. The ideal situation would be that such a person is supported by staff, 2-3, sit with that person and talk to them and calm them down. Now, you sometimes get to a situation where you don't have enough staff to have 3 left to only handle one patient. So in that situation, as medication is given and we wait for it to take effect, which takes a few minutes, maybe 30 minutes, maybe sometimes an hour, such a patient who is potentially aggressive is put in a side room and observed there until the drugs take effect, then they are removed.
My coming to hospital was uncertain because I was given a jab which sedated me. So I gained consciousness when I was in the side room. That is the 4 walls in which people are put for seclusion as a way of offering them support when they are disturbed. And that was very disturbing for me because I didn't know how I got there and I was seeking for help. There's no window. The easiest way to access it is reaching for the ceiling, and it was a roller coaster, if I may say, because I didn't know what was happening to me, and I was so agitated and restless, and my mind was disorientated.
And the nurses tried so hard to help me out. At one point, when I was in the hospital, I would beat my fellow patients so much. At times, I would even go ahead and fight around with the askaris who were catering for me. So what they had to do was to put me in a seclusion room, in a cold room, and freeze me for about 3 days in a cold room, naked, so that the energy in me is reduced.
Not for everybody. Again, there are conditions where a person takes medicines just for a specified time and they get well and we stop medication. Others once and forever, because if you came in with a mental illness, it resulted from a severe bout of malaria. The malaria is treated, you get your mental symptoms treated and they go down. One could stop medication and never take them again. if the disease doesn't come back. But there are those that might require to take medication, probably a little longer, or on and off. They are assessed by the doctor, and if the doctor sees they don't require medication anymore, they are told to stop taking these medicines, but they keep being checked. And should there be need for the medicines to be reinstated, then that happens and they take them. Then there are those whose symptoms probably on most of the time, and if we stop medication, the symptoms immediately come back. Then those are advised to take the medicines on a continuous basis. Not to say for life, but for as long as they are advised to take the medicines, it's important that they keep taking them. Of course, time comes when they are asked to stop. Others, it becomes risky to stop the medicines. So those are advised to keep taking them on for a longer time. And you see, this doesn't happen only for mental illness. Even a lot of people that suffer diabetes, that suffer high blood pressure, that suffer asthma, some of them are advised to stop after some time, but some are advised to keep taking for as long as the pressure keeps high, or for as long as the blood sugar is not well controlled. Yeah, so it is on an individual, person-person basis or individual basis. There is no blanket thing to say, so people with mental illness should take medicines for life.
In the beginning, as I was starting these drugs, I was very small. I was weighing about 75 kilos. But these days I'm weighing about 85 kilos. And the eating is not normal as it used to be.
It's true, scientifically, some of the medicines that we use in controlling mental symptoms also work or stimulate the appetite center, which is situated in the brain. And once they do that, then we see a person's appetite going up, and they are forced to take a little more than usual. Chances are really high when treatment is instituted. A lot of people do get well or get out of the problem. But the other factors must not be forgotten. The type of disease that one is having, the causes, and the compliance to medication. All these factors, work together to determine outcome or outlook of the disease. I think the important thing is to have the families get opportunity for enlightenment or being educated about mental illness. This can be even the service user, because a lot of our service users have a lot of knowledge about mental illness. They can use whatever opportunities available to educate their families about mental illness, and if they are not accepted, like many times it happens, it's important for them to be persuaded or requested to go and visit the health workers together with the client, so the health worker can play the role of offering that education to them, so that they are brought on board in terms of knowing information about mental illness and getting to know how to handle the patients, how to go through various challenges that the clients from time to time encounter. Again, it's the same issue. We need to offer information, as much information as we can, to the public, to the communities, so that the patients, service users, are easily accepted wherever they are, wherever they go.
I always invite people to join us. Just come and find out what we do. Your support, even your presence, Like you're brave enough to stand in the middle of over 50 service users, 1,000, because we're in the hospital. To me, that's a sign that there is change. It could be slow, but gradually we're getting there. The dream is now achievable. We are no longer at the stage where we think, oh no, my world is stopped. Although other members in our group now, that's where they are. But we are there to show our example and help them come out, and then they help others and the generations to come.
Of course, one important thing is to know what they have, to appreciate it, and get to know what it's all about. If they know what they have, if they accept what they have, I think that's a very important step in helping themselves improve their lives. And of course, knowing it and accepting it in a positive way, and not thinking that once they have this kind of disease, then that's the end for them. They cannot do anything, they cannot handle anything. I think it's important for our clients to appreciate that mental illness is a disease like any other. It could give limitations, but in many ways they can keep functional. They can make contribution to the development of their countries. They can marry, they can work, they can study, and do whatever they want to do and achieve in life.
Because people are not psychotic or mentally disturbed through and through at all seasons, at all times. There are episodes where there are episodes of functionality during the illness, and with treatment, this can be maintained for a long duration of time when people explain periods of functionality. During those periods of functionality, you may even doubt whether these people are mentally challenged. Because some people, actually, when we started the Heart Sound organization, people did not expect that we are mentally challenged. We would go to the bank and we would be withdrawing millions of money, and the bank people were saying, these people are bafere. We are consters. We pretend to be mentally challenged, but they said, how can a mentally challenged person write a proposal? And it seeks millions of money when you're disturbed mentally. I've got friends, even some of my fellow peer support workers, some of my fellow mental patients, they say, Eddie, for you, you're just pretending. You're now a profession. Because of the recovery I've enjoyed. Because it is difficult to say someone who is disturbed functioning to a level that is competing with people who are not challenged.
I'm not sure it's really big. Probably for those that choose to get services, private services, outside the general government hospitals. In government, clearly it's free of charge. But you see, it's a choice. If you probably don't want to come to the government hospitals, you opt to go private, then there you could be charged a little more. Mental health consultations tend to be a little higher because of the fact that the health workers that provide that private service or generally assessment, for example, of somebody with a mental health problem takes longer than an ordinary general medical consultation. Normally a mental health patient would stay longer in a consultation room than a person that has gone simply to consult for maybe diabetes or high blood pressure or any other physical illness, because there are lots of things that need to be addressed for somebody with a mental health problem. I think this is the reason for a slightly higher consultation fee in the private domain than the other diseases. I think for anybody with a mental health problem and is on the street, it's the duty of every member in that society to support these people to health facilities where they can be helped. Because a person with a mental health problem on the street is like a person with a physical problem that has collapsed at the roadside and requires to be lifted and taken to an emergency service. So communities should respond with that background, that kind of person on the street requires urgent attention, and they should come in to help them, to support them. The usual problem we've had is that communities fear somebody with a mental challenge. So the thing to do, if there is that kind of fear, is to approach security services, police. I think they have a mandate to help and get these people and deliver them to hospitals where they can be helped. Sure, we can very, very gladly give that. I think it's already running somehow at the occupational therapy department, but as management would be very willing to develop that further, give them space, give them an office where they can meet, they can interact, they can support each other from, because when they do that for their friends, for their other sufferers, then they are supporting our services in a way, because in a way it prevents people relapsing, it promotes recovery, it encourages treatment, which is a very good thing to have at the hospital.